Once you have come up with your controlling idea and your characters, the next thing to do is build the world around the character. In storytelling, this is known as exposition. It introduces information about the world that they inhabit. It introduces other characters. It introduces potential challenges that our characters may face. In storytelling, it is important that the world be a function of the character living out the controlling idea. The world should be built from that. It enables the character to live out the controlling idea. So when you're thinking about the setting that you start off on, the setting needs to reflect the frustrations of your character. It needs to reflect why there is a need for change. The world then expands as you tell the story, but it expands in a way that allows people to see, yes, this is not only that he wants to do this, he needs to do this. He needs to make this change, to take this action. And this world, it will be better because of it. Thinking of like my favorite story, Star Wars, which I talk a lot in these kind of presentations. In Star Wars, for example, Luke Skywalker is living on a desert planet called Tatooine. It is a reflection of how he feels. It's a reflection of that there isn't much around. There isn't much for him to attach himself to. There's isolation. He wants to explore the universe. He wants to achieve more. He wants to do more. He is often seen staring at the two suns in the distance because he aspires to do more. The planet that he's on, the environment that he is in, is a reflection of how his character feels. As the story expands, then, the story expands to allow him to live out the controlling idea and to achieve everything that he is trying to achieve. The thing is, though, is that the stories, as you build them out, because you want the story to allow your character to live out the controlling idea, the important thing to do is make sure that your world doesn't over-expand. It doesn't become this unlimited world. It needs to be a limited world. It needs to be a knowable world. Firstly, because no one storyteller can create unlimited worlds. It requires a lot of depth. In a previous conversation, we talked about how TV shows have the ability to build out greater worlds, but it doesn't necessarily always happen all at once. You get introduced to characters, there's still the exposition, there's still that world that is built from the characters, and we are slowly introduced to it over time. But when we start off with a limited world, we know that we are mainly focusing on the character living out the controlling idea. If you expand your world too much, a couple of things will happen. The first is that it may not necessarily be as clear to the audience why your character needs to take that action if there are other things going on in the world. For example, in Star Wars, if we found out that there was several other Jedis potentially in other parts of the world and that there was other groups of rebels elsewhere in the universe, then Luke blowing up the Death Star at the end isn't impactful because we may think, well, there's some other people that could potentially do it. Or that isn't the only rebel base. There are other rebel bases. So why do they care? Like, it's not as urgent that they just save this one rebel base. We care because in our knowable universe, in the world that has been created for us, it is the thing that needs to happen. It is the thing that needs to happen for the universe, the world that we have learned about to become a better place. The second thing as well is that actually when we confine ourselves, we restrict ourselves and we think inside the box, we often find that there's a lot of increased and quicker innovations that can happen when it comes to creativity. If you work inside a familiar world, it is easier for you to tell a story within that world. If you expand it too wide, you may not be as familiar. You may start overreaching and not really be clear in the message that you're trying to tell. I recommend reading a book called Inside the Box by Drew Boyd and Jacob Goldenberg, who actually speak about like the importance of being able to innovate and create using very confined laws and working within a very confined structure. Because the thing is that when you work in confined structures, you often find that you can creatively tell compelling stories or solve problems in a way that is so simple and interesting and connects with people who understand that world as well. It's a lot easier to make that connection to the audience if they understand the world and you've been able to create something that sits nicely within that world. It's one of the reasons why in later Star Wars films, when they add new things in, fans often go, you can't do that. It's because they're adding to a world that the fans thought they knew. They thought that certain things were possible, and you've added stuff in that goes against what they thought the world was. But if you stick within the world, you innovate in the world, people will connect with it better. So when you're setting the scene, you need to think about what is the setting, the period, the duration, the location. The period and the duration, the difference there is the period is when is this happening? And the duration is how long is this happening for? And the location is location. How should the setting change? How should the world change around the character? Luke Skywalker starts off on Tatooine, a planet that is also a desert. He then sees the universe. He gets to see the universe. How is the setting not good enough? He aspires to do more. There's not much there on Tatooine for him. What is the weakness, the conflict in this world? What is the thing that is going to cause our character to make a change, to take action? And in this case, the conflict in the world was the introduction of other characters, C-3PO, R2-D2, Ben Kenobi, Obi-Wan. All of these scenes are setting the scene, setting us up to understand the story, understand the world, and see our character live out the controlling idea.